After many rainy days in these mountains, I realized that I might not get the perfect conditions for a hike. There was a strong chance that the sky wouldn't clear at all, so Jace and I had two choices: to stay inside or to walk up into the clouds anyway. It didn't look like it at first, but it ended up being better to see what could happen rather than to not go at all, and even with some rain, it led to one of the most memorable views. Hi, I'm Ling and I'm turning my apartment into a home art studio. Recently, I've been making a whole collection of homewares and paintings that are all inspired by my own experiences. This video is not going to be what I originally had in mind. It's about halfway through the year now, and I really thought that I'd be able to share my very first realistic oil painting, but I've run into a huge problem, which is that I actually just can't start it. Instead, I've spent a lot of time staring at a blank canvas, and it's strange because it's not really about starting something new, even though I did only start oil painting for the first time a few months ago, because while I've been putting off this painting, I've actually been able to start and finish whole other ones, and I realized that I'm kind of just keeping this particular canvas blank. It's not that I don't have the time or materials that I need to do this, and I even know exactly what I want to paint, but I found myself thinking that if I start this painting, I also open the chance of messing it up. And until I said that out loud the other day, I didn't really realize that I was dealing with perfectionism. So this video was originally going to be the whole process of painting my favorite photo of all time, but instead it's turning into my attempt to overcome perfectionism. And I think this has come up a lot recently, especially since starting this channel, because I've seen some of the most heartwarming comments about this. And it seems like a lot of us are actually in the same position of trying to balance inspiration with doubt. And I'm starting to think that maybe those two things are just equally part of the creative process. I wanted to share one really nice comment which said, "I'm so happy YouTube suggested this video to me. It's very inspirational. I'm a photographer, but after visiting a Matisse exhibition in Paris a few weeks ago, I somehow felt the urge to start painting as well. I didn't get any supplies yet because I'm still in doubt if this is me." And I feel like this makes a lot of sense to me, and is probably a very common experience to have a feeling of inspiration or an idea that you want to be able to act upon, but also to question whether that can even be true. And the tricky thing is that it can't really be true until you do it. You kind of have to prove it to yourself just by starting. And I feel like if you have that desire to try painting, you absolutely should. To me, the fact that you're thinking about it means that it's already in you. I'm definitely also saying this to convince myself, because I've started and stopped a lot in the last few months. And every now and then, I wonder whether it's in me to keep painting too. When I first moved into this apartment, I decided to turn it into an art studio. I spent a few weeks changing the walls and getting the space ready. Other than furniture and these small pieces, the very first things that I moved with were paintbrushes. I had such a strong vision of painting by the window in the afternoon, but it was more than a whole year before I used them for the first time. For quite a while, I put off getting other supplies like oil paints, canvases, and an easel, because I kept thinking that it would be better to wait until I had more time. It's not that I didn't create at all in that period. I started lessons for Chinese ink painting, and I also began to draw a lot more. but something about oil painting still felt very unachievable. I kept thinking that I was someone who could draw but not paint, and then I thought maybe I am learning to paint with ink, but I'm still someone who has never used oils. And then one day I realized that the only thing really keeping me in that position was my own way of thinking. I was waiting for more time, but I could also only make that time once I decided to go for it. And pretty much overnight, I did just that. When I finally got to it, I absolutely loved oil painting. I had a really light gradient in mind for my first one, and oils worked so well because they can be thinned out and laid very delicately. It was such a relaxing process to create this piece. Once I finished it, I wanted to keep going right away. My first painting of irises was very stylized, and I really wanted to try doing a realistic painting next. There was also a place that had always been in my mind. The scene that I came back to for my next painting is also from one of my favorite areas in China. My parents traveled there when they were around my age, and Jace and I decided to go and see it for ourselves. We spent a morning by the Li River in autumn, and it's one of my favorite memories. We didn't have any plans other than to see the sunrise, and I definitely didn't have a specific place or shot in mind, but after walking for a while, we found this peaceful stream. I know.
That's nice. I sat down a little. Yeah, no, it's too much. Oh, that's fine. That'll be fine because it'll, like the sun will come up. I should be showing you, right?
Oh, I'm just following him around.
No, it's a great shot.
Thanks. When it comes to photography, I actually have the opposite of perfectionism. There's nothing stopping me from reaching for the camera when I see a landscape I like, and I usually can't imagine anything better than what's in front of me. I'm so casual with it though, and Jace is the one who normally takes the time to improve things, maybe by changing the angle or the camera settings every now and then. But I've never felt like that process has gotten in the way, because we both enjoy it so much that it just comes easily. When we got home, I looked through all of our photos from this area to paint, and I actually filmed the process of planning one out a few months ago. I've started drawing the outline for my next painting, and I'm also just preparing the canvas. I decided to tape up the frames so I don't ruin it as I go, and I also chose a canvas with a really natural finish. So this is a linen canvas, and I really like the natural texture. I'm thinking about ways that I can keep my layers of paint really thin and hopefully have some of the linen showing through in part of the artwork. But to be honest, I'm actually really nervous to start this painting at all. I've only finished one painting before, and it was in a more simplified abstract style, and this will be the first thing that I ever paint in a realistic style. I've thought a lot about which photo to paint, and we have so many to choose from an area in Guilin in China. But I'm also a little bit daunted by the idea of painting something too complicated straight away, and I thought a bit about whether I could find something where Jace and I are facing away from the camera, just to make it a little bit easier. But I also know that I have to paint this photo. It's just one of my favorites and really captures how I saw Jace in that moment. So I'm going to start by mapping out everything in as much detail as possible. I know when I was younger, I had a really bad habit of rushing into a drawing and leaving the hardest parts until the very end. I learned very quickly that that's probably the worst thing that you can do. Sometimes I'd end up with a finished drawing and then really struggle through things like the faces or the hands and make mistakes at the very last part of the artwork. So today I know that I can take my time, and even if it takes a week for the first layer, I really just want to make sure the entire outline is as good as it can be. I spent that afternoon drawing the scene on the canvas. But the most unsatisfying thing is that once I had the outline, I stopped again. I'd taken all of my paints out and thought about how to start, but I just didn't. The painting was paused before I even picked up the brushes, and instead, I left it on the easel like this for a really long time. I had some kind of block, and I redirected all of my energy into something that felt easier, a painting of another memory which has simpler colors and less details. I painted the first layers, and while I waited for them to dry, I started a completely different painting too. This one was for a collection that I'm making with my friend, and I thought I could maybe have something ready in time for her visit to Australia, so I did have a huge incentive to start it. But while I worked on that, someone reached out and asked if I could do a painting commission. I was really excited to have the opportunity, and it also came with a very close deadline, so I dropped everything else to make it happen. It's not necessarily a bad thing to go with the rhythm of your own energy, curiosity, or excitement, and I think that you can look at consistency as something that stretches over a long period with those things, rather than something that you have to show literally at all times. Starting these paintings also helped me to experiment more with my new materials and to find my own styles. I practiced using different paints and color palettes, I tried out different mediums, and I got used to the texture of the linen canvas. But a few months passed and I still hadn't started the piece that I had in mind. I genuinely looked at this outline every day and really thought about it a lot, but the longer I left it, the more pressure I put on it. I had work during the week and photo shoots on the weekends, so I kept thinking that there wasn't an open time to commit to it just yet. I do think that part of this comes from aiming so high that I create an internal pressure. For a few years, I tried to start very large drawings, but most of them stayed half finished. When I look at them now, I can see that I actually labored the process trying to get them right, and really, they never needed to be so precise. I left them for so long that even if I picked them up again now, I think I'd struggle to finish them in this same clean style because how I create has changed so much since then. The main thing is that I've practiced drawing a lot more, working on very small ones as often as I can, and also without any expectation. I decided to start one from the same scene in China too. Because it was just a sketch, I thought that it was very easy to do and there was absolutely no pressure on it. But I had to remind myself that I'd actually never drawn a landscape photo like this until about a year before this one, so it was actually quite a recent thing. And if I was able to go beyond what I knew with drawing before, I should always be able to do that again. A few months ago, I picked up a copy of The Artist's Way. There are a few parts that I wanted to share which said, "Perfectionism has nothing to do with getting it right. It has nothing to do with fixes. It has nothing to do with standards. Perfectionism is a refusal to let yourself move ahead. It's a loop, an obsessive, debilitating closed system that causes you to get stuck in the details of what you are writing or painting or making, and to lose sight of the whole. Instead of creating freely and allowing errors to reveal themselves later as insights, we often get mired into getting the details right. We correct our originality into a uniformity that lacks passion and spontaneity. For the perfectionist, there are no finished drafts, rough sketches, warm-up exercises. Every draft is meant to be final, perfect, set in stone. Usually, when we say we can't do something, what we mean is that we usually won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly. I had told myself that I was putting off starting a realistic painting because I wanted to do it well and I needed to find the right time to get there. But I also know that improvement only comes from trying, experimenting, and moving forward with something. It is natural, though, to want to guarantee an outcome when you try something new, but it isn't always helpful. On a very simple level, I can tell you that I did really well in school. I stuck to things that I enjoyed, and I was rewarded for doing them. But on the other hand, this system also taught me not to pursue things that I was bad at. I can clearly see that with anything that I started at a young age and practiced a lot early on, like reading, art, or music, I was encouraged to keep doing it and to become even better. But for anything that I struggled with, like maths or science, it actually seemed easier for me not to learn at all because there was less reward for small improvement and really no reward for doing worse than someone else. These things turn into patterns of thinking, and we start to identify ourselves as inherently good or bad at certain things. It's like carving into jade. If there's an established path, it's easier for our thoughts to follow it rather than to carve out something new. And when we follow it again and again, it becomes a groove that gets carved deeper and deeper. And it takes a lot more effort for our mind to go against the grain in another direction where a path hasn't even been cut yet. The easiest way to get out of this is to practice taking the alternative path. Practice trying something new or even just thinking another way. Break up repetition with something spontaneous. You could also try to picture what the other path is, the one that seems like the worst outcome. Maybe it is that the first realistic painting that you ever do isn't going to be as good as you hoped, and you just need to ask yourself whether you can be okay with that and try it anyway. And if you can, the only guaranteed outcome is that you will learn. If everything that we try is just an experiment, then making mistakes is also part of the process. Especially with something like painting, unless we make some kind of damage that can't really be fixed, it's usually possible to just paint over. And the process is so drawn out and slow that it's very easy to realize that nothing is finite. If the shape or color doesn't quite fit, I can always add to it, but it's so much easier to build on top of a base. While I'm putting this video together, I've been thinking about how you really can't edit a blank page. One thing that I jumped into without overthinking recently was starting this channel. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by a lot of people who are so uplifting, and when I did it, I got the kindest support from friends. Maybe I can share a few of their messages here. But I also understand that it can be easy to have doubts about things that we aren't familiar with, and some people definitely also shared those before I started. While I was editing my first video about my art studio, I mentioned to someone that I'd enjoyed shooting a longer video for the first time. They said, "Are you sure you should make longer ones though? Is it a good idea? Do people even watch long videos anymore?" When there's something that I like doing, I am very focused on just doing it, and I usually share things out of excitement rather than for someone else's validation. So that kind of reaction does not faze me at all, and I also just don't think that it's that serious. Whether someone watches a longer video or not, I really just enjoyed making them for the first time. But there was definitely a time when I was less sure about trying things, and it might have discouraged me a lot more. Or at least, if you hear worries like this enough over time, it's easy to just get worn down by them. There are also a lot of ways that I could have limited myself with this, especially with filming, because you can always wait for better lighting or aim for better takes if you really want to, but waiting won't help because it's definitely only possible to improve on things that you actually make. I posted my first video without any lighting or proper audio. It definitely wasn't perfect, but it got me thinking about where it could go. And a lot of the things that can be changed are actually very easy fixes. After posting the first video, Jace thought that the audio could be improved, so we picked up a microphone. And that immediately made the next video that I filmed a bit better. But if I was waiting for the perfect gear before filming it all, I would never have had anything to share. I started this year thinking that I'd maybe have time to make around 6 videos, but after I finished the first one, I was able to get a lot more momentum. And in just a few months, those videos have already helped me to focus more on my art, to send paintings to people around the world, to start commissions and get brand partnerships, and to have a lot more conversations about creativity, which I've really loved. On reflection, I think my idea to have a finished realistic oil painting by this time was the most unrealistic thing that I could have set for myself, but I'm also grateful for that internal drive which even comes up with those ideas at all. Over the last few weeks, I've been able to spend about 3 afternoons on this painting. For some reason, I thought that if I filmed myself making it, I would probably have a video when it was completely finished. But I know that each stage is just as important as the final thing, and everything is really in the process itself. These are only the first few layers, and there's still a long way to go, but I love the point that it's up to now, and it's so nice to come home and see it on the easel. If you've watched this, thank you so much for spending time here. It would be great if you could subscribe to this channel for more art, but in the meantime, I hope it's just been a good place to rest.